what do you think about this EK cruise?
Well, it's great. So, I mean, you've really managed to collect a large number of people, and I've heard that it's increased now year on year for quite some time as well.
Do you have some similar things going on in Sweden?
Well, we do have a network, Näringslivets säkerhetsdelegation, and what we do there is we have sort of 6 regions where we have a sort of seminar kind of activity, and we also have a central delegation. So we have something comparable, similar, yes.
Maybe we could consider something that we could have a mingle on this kind of event together,
or a common
organize
event.
maybe once in a year some cruise where we can get in 100 people from Sweden, 100 people from Finland, from various kind of roles, discuss about the security and run this maybe as an additional event.
Yeah, sounds great.
Thank you for the nice presentation what you made there in just a minute ago, and you were discussing very much of the security situation, what is happening in Sweden.
Right.
And it seems very alarming. And then on the other hand, the situation is a lot worse in Sweden than what is in Finland or Norway and so on. What you would recommend, what we should do in Finland and Norway avoiding this kind of situation and unwanted development, what is going on now here?
I mean, I think a way of looking at the Swedish situation, of course, it's an issue, it's a development that is of concern, but to some extent it's sort of almost a normalization of Sweden in relation to the rest of the world and Europe. I mean, if we look at a number of other European countries, I mean, these sort of utsatta områden, these problematic neighborhoods, I mean, they've had issues like that for decades. It's not something new if you look at France, for example. Or so, I mean, I would say maybe, looking to learn. I mean, there are countries that have had issues longer than Sweden. And this is one of the things that is slightly worrying, and that's when you talk to the people who focus on these issues, is that actually there are quite few positive examples where they managed to turn the development in a positive direction.
Do you think that the security and safetyness is going to be improved in Sweden, or is it continuing in that declining situation that it's getting worse?
Of course, it's very hard to say, and it depends on your sort of time perspective. I mean, clearly new technologies will affect certain kinds of crime in future, but there has been sort of a robust response from the sort of political side and the political will to give more resources and employ new police. But to implement that, I mean, will take time. So, will the trend of things getting worse continue? Hard to say, but I mean, I think it would be optimistic to see that we would have a sort of a radical improvement within the short. So it's sort of maybe a little bit of a new normal.
Could it be in some sort of new format of collaboration in the Nordic countries, for example, where we have a shared training and sharing of your experience, and also on the other hand start to preparing that if we have some possibilities that the similar situations has caused in another part of the Nordics, that we could create some preventive ways of sensing these things and also sharing information, statistics, that kind of things that would help?
No, and I think to some extent, I mean, if we look at the cooperation in the security area generally, in the Nordics it's increasing. I mean, on the military side, on the sort of civil preparedness side, the security police in the different Nordics cooperate. So to some extent, I mean, some of the problems we're having, I mean, it's the same problem, but it's a matter of degree and the different countries. So I think absolutely, and I mean, of course, within the European Union with Europol, and so that's happening more and more. And in a sense, I mean, if you look at the internationalization of crime, it's kind of a logical
growth
thing on law enforcement side as well, that you're having an increased internationalization. Because how can you deal with an international problem when it comes to certain types of crime if you don't have a collaborative approach to that?
That's right. Then if we are looking at cybercrime, it seems like that it's now the biggest crime area in the whole world. It's creating most value for the criminals. How you see that coming into the picture in Sweden and also for all around in the Nordics?
Yeah, no, so I think very much this issue of cyber being sort of a tool for other kinds of crimes. If you look at fraud, things are becoming it's becoming more sophisticated. I mean, I think we all know these kind of, Nigeria letters.
Yes.
And even very simple crimes, I mean, you can just make it more sophisticated with small tweaks. If you put a sort of nice logo in there, or if you do a bit of research to make the message more targeted, I mean, your kind of success rate obviously increases. So it's sort of a kind of evolution, right? I mean, still digitalization and these services are new, so it's in a sense inevitable that we have this kind of catching up and crime becoming more sophisticated and using these tools. And then, of course, the law enforcement will be behind because the crime has to kind of occur before you start
It's very dynamic.
responding to it. So yeah, I think we're always going to be trying to catch up.
Yeah. Okay, so last question. If we are thinking about the Nordic citizens, what you would recommend them to do? Do you have some sort of advice how they could make their living safer and more secure? And what kind of things, if they observe something which is peculiar or cause threat for their neighborhood, what do you recommend them to do?
Well, I mean, in Sweden we had this communication that went out to every household, this little booklet, if the crisis or war arrives. So, I mean, one is just to have things in your home so that you can, survive without electricity, water, for sort of food, for some sort of. So, I mean, that's sort of a basic on that side. When it comes more to crime, I mean, to some extent, I mean, especially now with like you mentioned, with cybercrime, digitalization, I mean, we all become potentially more exposed all the time in our pockets with our phones and our email. So to some extent, we always have to have an awareness. And I think particularly in the Nordic countries, we had sort of a period where people could relax and not worry so much. Now I think we have to be a little bit more
now we are
paying attention all the time.
Of the real world.
Yes,
global
right.
real world.
Yeah.
Sensing all the problems what is going around the world. Thank you very much,
Great.
Karl. It has
Thank
been
you.
very nice to having you here.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.